Hi everyone. I will present one study on behalf of my co-author, and the title of my talk is Solomon is Weird: The Influence of Culture on Wise Reasoning in the Context of Self-Read Conflict and Its Mechanism. Before introducing our research, I would like to talk about wisdom and culture from Chinese indigenous perspective briefly, as the suggestion of the meeting organizer. In our tight model of confusion self, yin and yang represent the small self and the large self respectively. The smallest self is similar to the independent self, and the large self is similar to the interdependent self, which including other people. The change and transformation between yin and yang reflect the Confucian personality cultivation in the tradition of restraining the small self and extending the large self. The target of this is that mental synchronization of humans and the universe. To a certain extent, this is also the process of wisdom in Chinese culture. Empathy and self-regulation on the small self play an important role in the process. Because empathy can strengthen the connection between people, it is the key to form the large self. Self-regulation is a necessary way to break through the small self, and it is also helpful to the harmony among people. Let's come back to our research. Solomon was the biblical king most famous for his wisdom. The Judgment of Solomon perhaps is the best known story of his wisdom. Besides his siege judgment, Solomon also provided wise advice to those who sought his help. However, when it came to the most important decisions in his own life, Solomon lacked wisdom, a phenomenon that contributed greatly to his kingdom division. Researchers refer this phenomenon as Solomon's paradox. They used the infidelity scenario and found that people reason more wisely about other people's social problems than about their own. However, Solomon's paradox has so far only been tested in Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic samples. Researchers showed that people from what they call weird populations are outliers on many measurable psychological phenomena for which data are available, such as borrow reasoning and self-concepts. So, are the Solomon's paradox, which is associated with reasoning, self-concepts, cultural universe? We all know that Westerns or weird populations have more independent views of self than non-Westerns, that the difference of self-type influence the individual's wisdom performance in the face of the conflict of self or friend. There are multiple ways to define wisdom. The person-centric approach defines wisdom as a function or characteristic of a person. Some scholars have argued that wisdom can be better understood as a situational characteristic. In this context, wisdom is best understood as wise reasoning concerning social conflicts based on the individual's perspective-taking ability, a search for compromise and resolution, consideration of the possibility of change, and acknowledging uncertainty and the limits of one's own knowledge. Personal conflicts impede wise reasoning because people are more likely to immerse themselves in their own perspective and emotions, relegating other perspectives out of awareness and increasing certainty regarding preferred perspectives. In contrast, reasoning about other people's conflicts facilitates wise reasoning through the adoption of different viewpoints and the avoidance of some biases. For example, poor recognition of one's shortcomings. Studies have predominantly relied on situation-dependent self-distancing techniques to boost wise reasoning. Solomon paradox has so far only been tested in Westerns. Most of them are independent self. For independent self, the self is viewed as independent and distinct from one's social environment, whereas for interdependent self, the self is viewed as interdependent with significant others, constructed through interpersonal relations. Thus, Solomon's paradox may have different characteristics and mechanisms among Chinese. The interdependent self may make Chinese people not be able to avoid the influence of self-centeredness when they deal with interpersonal conflicts encountered by significant others, such as their friends. They may easily be involved in those conflicts. This may impede wise reasoning with their best friends in interpersonal conflicts. Based on the above analysis, we have two hypotheses. One, Americans endorsed great wise reasoning strategies in the friend conflict condition than in the self-conflict condition, while among Chinese, endorsement of wise reasoning strategies did not differ between the two conditions. 2. People with independent self exhibited greater wise reasoning in the friend conflict than in the self-conflict condition, whereas people with interdependent self didn't have significant differences between the two conditions. We examined those issues in 3 studies. In study 1, we recruited participants from MTOK and a Chinese survey platform similar to the MTOK. The final sample consisted of 282 American participants and 295 Chinese participants. Participants were randomly assigned either self-conflict or friend conflict conditions. They were asked to think about a close relationship that was currently not going very well, and then responded to the wise reasoning scale about their daily social conflicts and self-control scale. The results using the alignment and ANOVA both showed that Americans reason more wisely about friends' interpersonal conflict than about their own, while the Chinese didn't have significant differences between the two conditions. Moreover, the interaction effect of independent self and conflict type on wise reasoning was significantly positive in Chinese culture. Among participants high in independent self, endorsement of wise reasoning strategies was greater in the friend conflict condition than in the self-conflict, whereas among participants low in independent self, endorsement of wise reasoning strategies did not differ between the two conditions. In study 2, we created a between subjects design online, and in study 3, we created theme design in lab. Both of them are in Chinese culture. In study 2, the final sample consisted of 710 participants. In study 3, 50 participants from 2 universities were recruited under each condition. Thus, the final sample consisted of 200 participants. We used the priming technique to activate either independent or interdependent self-knowledge. In the independent priming condition, participants thought about how they are different from their family and friends. In the interdependent priming condition, participants thought about their similarities to their family and friends. In study 2, people responded to the wise reasoning scale about their daily social conflicts, same as the study 1. In study 3, people reasoning about a standard scenario that is betrayed by his best friend who told his secrets to another friend. The results of study 2 and 3 all showed that independent participants reason more wisely about friends' conflict than about their own, while the differences between the conflict type were not significant among interdependent participants. Through 3 studies, we can suggest that Solomon's paradox may only exist in individuals who with high independent self and does not have culture university. The 2 research published on psychological science about Solomon's paradox relies on Western samples and uses those data in an unreflective way to make inferences about humans in general. Besides the problem of weird samples, we should pay more attention to the problem of weird researchers. A diverse science must include a diverse group of scientists. Thank you for listening.